Joining us now, MSNBC's Kevin Frey, and he has been following the political implications of this case from Capitol Hill, and Justin Levitt, professor of law at Loyola Law School. And Kevin, this is a very consequential case. What's at stake here?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is looking at whether or not to uphold Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and essentially whether or not these districts that are drawn as majority black, majority minority, can stand under the Constitution. And up until the most recent election, Louisiana actually took a step to ensure that there were two districts in the state that basically met those sorts of standards. It is about 1/3 of the population in Louisiana is black. This creates two black majority districts, one in Louisiana, one in New Orleans, one stretching from Baton Rouge up to Shreveport. The big question here, though, is if the Supreme Court, which heard this case previously, punted it to this current term, if they decide to gut that aspect of the Voting Rights Act and overturn, for example, the maps in Louisiana, that could have ripple effects in states across the country, where you could see GOP-led states look to redraw their maps as well. We're already seeing a redistricting battle play out, most notably between Texas and California. If you see other states follow through, that could lead to presumably more Republican-held districts, and that could undermine efforts by Democrats to win back control of the House of Representatives, which, of course, is their key aim heading into the midterms in just over a year.
Kevin, thank you so much for your reporting. And Justin, you filed an amicus brief in this case being heard today. Can you explain your argument to our viewers?
Sure. I mean, the argument is that this 60-year-old precedent, the Voting Rights Act, and the rules around the Constitution are easy to follow if you're trying. Basically, the court is asking how much entities can consider race in the redistricting process, whether it's constitutional at all. Their answer for 60 years has always been maybe, a little bit. The way that you consider race can be unconstitutional, but it's also possible to consider race in a way that fights discrimination. And Congress has the authority, the very clear authority under the 15th Amendment, to decide when we can combat discrimination and how. For the court to go back on that today and in the months to come, I think would undo 150 years of jurisprudence about what powers Congress has, which is really what this case is about.
Now, this case, as you were mentioning, centers around Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits discriminatory election practices based on race. The critics here are arguing that redistricting should be colorblind, that the 50-year-old law is somewhat antiquated, and we don't need this to protect black communities because segregation is no longer in effect. What's your response to that?
A couple of responses. First of all, the law that we have now, the jurisprudence we have now, comes to us through Justice O'Connor. She was the last justice to sit on the court who actually went through the redistricting process, did it 3 times. No other justice has actually drawn lines since. And what she knew as a practical matter is that you can't unsee race. Redistricting is about drawing communities. It's about representation for real communities, and legislators know who those communities are. Even independent bodies know who those communities are. So race, she understood, is always going to be in the mix. The second thing I'd say to those critics is that the Voting Rights Act has been caricatured. It's an anti-discrimination statute. It doesn't exist to give racial entitlements. It doesn't exist to draw districts every time there's a group of minority voters. It's designed to combat discrimination and to make sure that discrimination in the electoral process and discrimination beyond the electoral process doesn't spill over into politics. It doesn't apply wherever there are minority voters. It only applies where there are vestiges of discrimination that need to be rooted out. And that's exactly why Congress has the power to make sure that we don't have discrimination in voting elsewhere in the country.
But you can tell when Trump does care about something. You can tell when he really does understand something. Like, say, yesterday in Egypt, when he seemed to know exactly what was going on. This man, the man Trump gleefully pointed to and said had unlimited cash, is a member of the royal family in the UAE. He's the vice president and deputy prime minister of the country, and he and his brothers control the rich nation's various sovereign wealth funds, making them some of the wealthiest people on earth. And back in May, the Emirati royal family used one of those sovereign wealth funds to give Trump, as he might put it, a lot of cash. An Emirati sovereign wealth fund controlled by one of this guy's brothers deposited $2 billion into the Trump family's crypto startup. $2 billion. That is a lot of cash indeed. No wonder Trump was all smiles yesterday. I think we know. Now, here is where it gets even sketchier, and I know that doesn't even seem possible, but it does. Last month, the New York Times reported that just 2 weeks after the Emiratis put that money in Trump's pocket, the White House agreed to let the UAE access hundreds of thousands of the world's most advanced and scarce computer chips, despite national security concerns for doing so. Now, the White House denied that there was any sort of pay for play there and says that everyone involved in both of these deals, quote, acted appropriately. But who on earth would take their word for it at this point? And let's be real. Those deals don't exist in a vacuum. None of them do. They're part of a pattern, a whole pattern. Just yesterday in Egypt, Trump was also caught on a hot mic talking to the president of Indonesia. And here's the gist of what we heard. The president of Indonesia asked Trump for a meeting with Trump's adult son, Eric, who runs the Trump family businesses and is therefore supposed to be firewalled off from Trump to avoid corruption. I mean, Eric Trump was promoting a Trump family golf course in Indonesia as recently as this month. So the potential conflicts of interest here are quite clear. But nonetheless, Trump responded by saying, quote, I'll have Eric call. He's such a good boy. I'll have Eric call. That he's such a good boy is very strange, but that aside. And he isn't even the only son who is up to some sketchy business. It's a whole pattern in the family, too. Yesterday, we also got some alarming news about one of Trump's other adult sons, Don Jr. Don Jr. is a partner at a venture capital firm called 1789 Capital. And while the firm claims Don Jr. himself was uninvolved in this event, the Wall Street Journal reports that 1789 Capital was trying to sell sponsorships to a conference that was marketed like it was an official government event. The event was called the inaugural U.S. Treasury AI Summit. And while a Treasury Department spokesperson says the agency had not approved any of the marketing materials, the event claimed that Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, would unveil the Treasury's AI strategy at the event. And the event is also on the date that the Treasury Department is expected to unveil its actual new policies on AI. So a lot of things working together at once. And Bessent is actually scheduled to speak at the event, alongside other people who do AI policy, like the White House's senior policy advisor for AI and the Treasury Department's chief AI officer. And while the attendance of all of those government officials is giving this event its value to the people attending, the venture capital firm that Don Jr. is a partner at is cashing in. They are selling all sorts of sponsorship packages to tech companies to sponsor the event, the most expensive level of which is called the presidential sponsor. That's quite on the nose, which gets you 25 tickets to the event itself, 2 invites to the event's VIP dinner, 8 tickets to the event's cocktail party, 6 spots in the event's VIP room, a large projection of your company's logo at the event, and a sponsored snack. That's right. You can now pay the president's son's venture capital firm to put out pigs in a blanket with your company's name next to it at an official U.S. government event, it seems. An event where the Treasury Secretary might make massive new policy announcements. That's possible, I guess, these days.
So if the court does undo some of the core tenets of the Voting Rights Act, it could mean that Republicans gain 19 seats, as we were hearing there from the reporting at the top in the House. That's on top of the seats that we've already seen in some of these redistricting efforts underway in places like Texas. What could be the longer-term impacts or precedent that this would set beyond just the upcoming midterms and for both parties?
Yeah, this is a big deal, and you're right, for both parties and long term. There are about 19 seats that would be in play in Congress. But well beyond that, this portion of the Voting Rights Act does most of its work in state legislative seats. It does most of its work in local districts for city council and county commission and other local municipal offices. The Voting Rights Act has been one of the most successful civil rights statutes ever passed because it puts all of the people back in control of how they're represented. And if the court decides to upend Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, to upend this really key provision, then that's going to mean free rein for discrimination, not just in drawing congressional lines, but in every level of representation we have. That's a really big deal.
Donald Trump's return to power has quickly turned into a case study in how political authority can be twisted for personal gain. What's unfolding is not policy in the traditional sense. It's transactional governance. Trump is weaponizing the levers of government to reward loyalty, punish opposition, and enrich himself and those closest to him, all while Republicans look the other way, or worse, cheer him on. Take the $20 billion bailout for Argentina. In theory, it's a financial rescue meant to stabilize a foreign ally's collapsing economy. In practice, it acts as a bribe disguised as foreign aid. Trump has openly tied the release of that money to the outcome of Argentina's election, especially telling an entire country that U.S. support depends on whether they vote for his preferred candidate. That crosses every diplomatic line imaginable, using American taxpayer dollars as leverage to sway another nation's democratic process sets a chilling precedent and reveals the core of Trump's leadership style: transactional loyalty above ethics, nationalism, or democracy. At home, the corruption runs even deeper. Trump has frozen or canceled nearly $28 billion in government projects, most of them in Democratic-led districts. Over $27 billion worth of cuts just happen to hit blue states, blue cities, and blue congressional areas. That move has nothing to do with fiscal conservatism, of course. It's just pure political retaliation. By targeting opposition districts, Trump is effectively punishing voters who did not support him, turning government funding into a partisan weapon. The message here is clear: vote Republican and support Trump, or lose federal support and dollars. Meanwhile, Trump and his family are personally profiting from their time in office in ways that make past scandals look mild, and these happen all the time nowadays. Reports show that a sovereign wealth fund controlled by the UAE royal family funneled $2 billion into a Trump family venture, a crypto startup with no track record whatsoever. And weeks later, the White House approved the sale of advanced U.S. semiconductor technology to the UAE, despite national security warnings. The timing alone raises every red flag in the book. It reflects this pattern where Trump's personal finances and his personal interests overlap almost perfectly with his official decisions as president. It just happens to be that he did what they wanted. It wasn't a bribe or anything. The hypocrisy from Republicans remains just staggering. For a party that's built its identity around opposing corruption, fiscal irresponsibility, and foreign influence, their current loyalty to Trump exposes how hollow those principles have become. They defend a leader who redirects taxpayer money away from American workers and into the pockets of his allies and himself. Government workers go unpaid, healthcare subsidies remain blocked, and millions face economic strain or poverty, all while Trump boasts about foreign payoffs and personal deals, and pretty much the bribes that all these countries are giving him. Remember that $400 million plane? This situation reflects more than political dysfunction. It represents just the pure ethical and moral collapse of the presidency, or of this administration at the very least. Republicans have allowed Trump to reshape their entire party around personal loyalty instead of constitutional duty. The result is an administration that treats democracy as an obstacle to overcome and to worm its way through, not a value to support and promote. The United States is witnessing the systematic dismantling of ethical governance in real time, and unless accountability returns, Trump's abuse of power will define the nation's political future.